Are you sick and tired of overpaying for players in the early rounds and they end up busting? Are you sick and tired of the Concheapsis rankings where they tell you these guys are going to finish on top, but they don't finish on top? Listen, in this video, I've handpicked 5 big-time fantasy football studs. I'm going to tell you guys why not to draft them, deep dive into some stats, and letting you guys know the facts before you guys overinvest on these 5 big name studs. So you have to be aware. It's about awareness, guys. That's how you win your leagues. You don't overpay, all right? So tons of reasons on why these 5 studs you must avoid in fantasy football 2022 drafts. Big names. These are not just like small names. These are massive names. Now, I'm excited to dive into this show, but before I do, guys, it's very important you head on over to manscaped.com and use code ShowerLion20. Today, I want to feature the Ultra Smooth Package, guys. Check this out. Now, they've got amazing products, and when they ship the products to me, I'm amazed at not only the packaging, but the quality, and then obviously the use. So what you get in this package, guys, is very simple here. You get an exfoliator, you get the crop gel, and then you get the actual razor here, the blade to actually trim. And again, guys, the packaging, the quality is amazing, and the cost of these is pretty affordable. Use ShowerLion20, save yourself 20%. Here's the blade, guys. And again, I sometimes use it on my face, but not after like I've used it on my balls, okay? So you want to make sure you use it accordingly in the proper spaces. So again, guys, you basically soothe it, you lube it, you shave it, guys. Get the Ultra Smooth Package, manscaped.com. ShowerLion20. Go treat yourself to that, all right? So let's dive into this episode, guys. We are talking about 5 big players to avoid. Let's get to it. All right, guys, welcome to the show. Make sure you guys grab that 16-round draft solution. I've linked it below. Optimal players to draft in each round, sleepers, breakouts, everything you need to crush your leagues. And let's get this video to 1,000 likes. Every time it hits 1,000 likes, I'm giving away in the comments, guys, in the comments, I'm going to give away a free 16-round draft solution. Access, email, free. And if you already have 16 rounds, I'll give you access to my 365 community. So, guys, how to get in. Like it, like the video. Let's get to 1,000 likes and comment below. Let me know what's up, how you guys are doing. Comment, like, we want to get to 1,000 likes, and I'm giving it away every video. Once it hits 1,000, I'm going to go into the comments and give away of course, I'm going to give away a 16 rounds or 365. And if you got both of those already, I'm going to give you guys a credit for next year. All right, guys? Maybe some other perks as well. So, like the video. Let's get to 1,000 likes, get 16-round draft solution. I've linked it below, all right? So let's dive into this, guys. First guy that I got to say I'm going to avoid. Now, if you've listened to my other shows, a lot of people have listened to my other shows, so to them, it's like, oh, Joe, you sound like a broken record. Some of these guys may be new to you on, Joe, why are you avoiding these guys? Why are you staying away from them? It might be new to you why you're hearing this, right? But I want to implore you guys, okay? I'm going to give you guys reasons. This isn't just like avoid Cooper Kupp. By the way, that's the first player. Avoid Cooper Kupp. I'm not just going to say avoid that player for just absolutely no reason. There's going to be reasoning behind it. There's going to be data. There's going to be backup. There's going to be all this information for you guys to analyze and make your own executive decision. All right. Now, these guys could still continue to produce on a top level. They're top guys, right? They're ultra elite talent guys, but I think they're going to decline significantly. So first guys here, Cooper Kupp. Why am I avoiding him? Let's go over the reasons why I'm avoiding Cooper Kupp. All right. First and foremost, way too expensive. So aside from anything, okay, I'm not going to pay a price for a guy that I was drafting last year, and I told you to draft last year in the 16-round draft solution, a guy that you could have got 4th round or after. Why? Because the mainstream consensus and the Concheapsis were drafting him, guys, believe it or not, behind Robert Woods. So why would I invest into a guy that's basically way too expensive now, and the sheep are riding? When I had him last year, I reaped the benefits of Cooper Kupp last year. I don't need him. I've got the fancy magazine here. And again, I talked about it in my other video. Robert Woods was ranked ahead of him. And if you guys don't believe me, let's dive into it. I showed it in my last video. I'm going to keep showing it to you so I hammer it home. And some people say, well, Joe, you keep talking about the Cooper Kupp example. There's a ton more examples like this. I'm just not going to get into all of them. Brandon Ayuk with Deebo Samuel. He was ranked ahead of Deebo Samuel. But here we go, guys. Robert Woods, here we go. Before we get into this here, can you guys see that? I'm going to zoom in. There it is. See, Robert Woods was ranked 15th. And again, I don't care if I sound like a broken record. I'm trying to emphasize the fact here, guys, that the mainstream are lying to you, right? They're the ones that told you last year there's Cooper Kupp 22nd. As you can see here, guys, let it zoom in and function. Can you guys see that? Okay, so Robert Woods was ranked 15th and Cooper Kupp was 22nd. All of a sudden, Cooper has this amazing year. Now they're riding him. So the same people telling you to draft Cooper Kupp first overall amongst wide receivers are the same people that lied to you last year and had Robert Woods ahead of him. So how do you have any trust in these guys? Well, you're saying, well, Joe Cooper had amazing numbers. That goes to point number 2. Okay, let's dive into this, okay? Numbers, 191, let me say this again, 191 targets last year, okay? 145 receptions, all right? That would only lead to like a Super Bowl win, wouldn't it? That would lead to a Super Bowl victory, Super Bowl finish, playoff run, all that stuff, right? What happens when something goes up? It must come down. Pinnacle numbers. I mean, nobody, even I'm going back here to 2019. I'm going to pull up the regular season wide receiver numbers. Michael Thomas had 185 targets that year. Michael Thomas was crushing it that year. 1,725 receiving yards, 9 touchdowns, 149 receptions. Michael Thomas, okay? He didn't even hit those numbers. Antonio Brown, his peak, didn't even hit those numbers. I think Antonio Brown's year was around 2015. I'm going to pull that up. Antonio Brown actually had 193 targets. So he had around similar, just more, 136 receptions, 1,834 yards, 8 receiving touchdowns. Even Antonio Brown in his amazing year in 2015 didn't have the amount of touchdowns that Cooper Kupp had at 16. All right, so decline is 100% happening. And again, this is the same conversation we had with Michael Thomas. Everybody was telling you Michael Thomas, guys, in 2020. Remember, he had the 2019 year, which I just went over. In 2020, everybody sent Michael Thomas. And then sure enough, Michael Thomas didn't even finish anywhere in the top 10. He busted. I think he got hurt that year. I'm trying to find out where Michael Thomas finished that year. I can't even find him. Oh, yeah, it was, let me pull it up here, guys. This was ridiculous. So I'm trying to make a point here that what goes up must come down. I'm not saying he's going to be Michael Thomas, but he will decline. So Michael Thomas actually in 2019 had this pinnacle year with 225 points in standard. In PPR, he had 374 points. The year after, he had 83.7 games, got hurt. So am I saying Cooper Kupp is going to get hurt? Not necessarily, but what I'm saying is what goes up must come down. And people kept saying, well, Joe, even a slight decline with Michael Thomas, I'm still okay drafting him as my first wide receiver because it's such a pinnacle year. That's such a broken argument, guys. And again, I'm going against the grain here. Everybody's telling you Cooper Kupp first overall. He's on the magazines now because he was on top last year. But I'm saying just completely avoid him. And another reason, you should be going robust RB early. You should be going running back at that position. There's a ton of depth at wide receiver later. A Drake London, who's a wide receiver 1 later. Adam Thielen, who could be the potential wide receiver 1. Darnell Mooney, who's a wide receiver 1. Christian Kirk's a wide receiver 1. Cortland Sutton or Jerry Jeudy are wide receiver 1s. You stack a bunch of these guys later, you're covered at wide receiver. You've got robust RB. You've got the more scarce position early. You're loaded up. So you want to avoid Cooper Kupp this year, guys. Such a pinnacle year. Declines happening. Way too expensive. And we know history shows us that coming off a pinnacle year, it's very unlikely you're going to repeat those numbers. Now, Antonio Brown had that run, but he's an anomaly. He had, a bunch of good seasons at the wide receiver position, and that could happen with Cooper Kupp. Based on history and what I'm seeing overall, I don't want to take that chance with my first overall pick or my top 5 pick or my first wide receiver pick or wide receiver in the first round for that matter. I'm going to fade him. I'm not going to be drafting him. I'm staying away. And again, he's copied and pasted from last year. And the last reason is, guys, Super Bowl hangover, such a pinnacle year. What goes up must come down. Also with the team, they've got Allen Robinson there. It's a different offense, different situation. I'm going to go ahead and fade myself a Cooper Kupp. All right, guys? Very, very simple. All right, next guy here, big name I'm going to fade. And again, you've probably heard me mention this, but I don't care. I'm going to talk about it. He's a top 3, top 4 wide receiver, copied and pasted from last year. The guy I'm talking about is Devontae Adams. Like, I don't see the hype. Let's go over the reasoning here. Adams had a great year, 169 targets, 123 receptions, 1,553 yards, 11 touchdowns. Why did he have that? Years of rapport with Aaron Rodgers. Guys, one reason and one reason only. If you want to break that down to 2 reasons, that's fine. He's had years with Aaron Rodgers, a ton of volume, a ton of opportunity, okay? Pinnacle Cinderella year. In comes a new quarterback, or in comes Adams to a new quarterback with Derek Carr, and I don't see the volume being there. How do I know that? Well, I look at last year's numbers, okay? I just do basic math. I'm not a mathematician by any sense of the word. I actually dislike math, but when it comes to fantasy, somehow I understand math. mathematically, and I'm going to go over this analogy over and over and over till you guys get it. And before I do, understand, guys, Cooper, Kupp, and Adams, they could still finish on top, but the red flags that I'm mentioning, the possible decline, the Super Bowl hangover, all these possible, what goes up must come down. History shows us all these things, are enough red flags to me go robust RB anyway. I should be avoiding these wide receivers round one anyway, because tons of depth at wide receiver. All these red flags and factual information to help me win my league outweigh the copy and paste theory of last year. Do you know what I'm saying? So again, I'm looking at a guy like Davante Adams. And again, let's go back to the math. The number one wide receiver for Derek Carr last year was Hunter Renfrow. Guess what he peaked at? He peaked at 128 targets, okay? And that was with Waller hurt. So why didn't Renfrow, okay, stick with me on this, why didn't he see 169 targets last year, right? He didn't see that, okay? They've got running backs to catch the ball in the backfield, all right? So there's a bunch of, let me take a look at what the running backs did. Running backs last year for the Raiders, Jacobs had, when we look at targets, 64 targets, Drake had 40, Peyton Barber had 13, Alec Ingold had 12, Jalen Richard had 14. So there's a ton of distribution to passing, passes. There's over 100, 50, 140 passing attempts to running backs as well. So keep that in mind when you're drafting Davante Adams, okay? So again, going back to Renfrow, 128 targets. Bryan Edwards had 59 targets. Zay Jones had 70, right? Ruggs. So again, there's all these bottom feeder wide receivers getting the volume, but Renfrow peaked at 128. Now, Waller, and again, I'm going to go over this, in 2020 had 145 targets. He was their number one wide receiver. So both Waller and Renfrow, trusted targets of Derek Carr, peaked at a max of 145 targets. Now, here's the kicker here, okay? They're still there, okay? So if they're still there, unless, and only unless they become complete pylons at the side and everything gets completely force-fed to Davante Adams, I do not see Davante Adams duplicating those numbers. And what the mainstream are telling you is they're saying draft Davante Adams completely predicated on last year's situation, which is the worst advice you can give anybody. So I want to hammer this point home, guys, that you do not listen to mainstream rankings. Go check my last video out. Go back on my YouTube, on my podcast. Go listen to the last video where I state, guys, that, you got to go robust RB and you got to not listen to rankings. I dive into more details on why. Okay, so Adams is a no-no for me. Cooper Kupp is a no-no. And these are big names. I'm telling you, everyone's running this way. I'm telling you, go the exact opposite way when it comes to these guys. You will be fine. Once you get the 16-round draft solution, linked it below. Use code TUBE20, by the way. Save yourself 20%. Once you've got that, you'll be like, man, I really, really don't need to draft a wide receiver round one. There's tons of depth. Wide receiver for days and days and days. All right? Let's go. Okay, number 3 here. Let's keep on the wide receiver trend. I got 2 running backs that are early round guys you got to avoid. Okay? Number 3 here. Let's dive into it, is Tyreek Hill, all right? Tyreek Hill, similar to Davante Adams and Cooper Kupp, are going to be fading. Let's talk about it. Jalen Waddle, last year peaked where? At 141 targets. Now, Devontae Parker was there. He shipped off. He had 73 targets. Not much there, but 141 targets for the number one receiver there last year. Okay, let's do some math. Let's do some back to grade 1, everybody. Basic math 101 here. All right, so students, basic math. Jalen Waddle peaked at 141 targets. Stick with me on this, guys. Basic math. Tyreek Hill thrived with a better quarterback in Pat Mahomes and peaked at 159 targets. So for Hill to duplicate those numbers that he had last year, stick with me, guys, the 159 targets. And let me just take a look here at what he had in regards to touchdowns here. He had 9 touchdowns, 159 targets, 1,239 yards, okay? For him to duplicate that, he needs volume. 111 receptions is what he had, okay? 69.8% in regards to receiving. He needs a lot of volume, all right? Will he get that volume if Waddle's there? And both these guys are in the top 14 amongst rankings, right? Hill's like number 6, 7, 8, something like that. Predicated on which magazine or consensus site you're listening to or what podcast you're listening to. He's a top wide receiver. Why? Because it's predicated on last year. maybe he duplicates. Maybe he comes in, gets force-fed, and Tua just lights it up, and they have this amazing connection, and it's even better than Mahomes. Maybe. But I'm not sold on that. I'm not sold on Tua being an amazing quarterback. I'm not sold on Waddle taking a back seat. This guy was drafted first round by the Miami Dolphins. They like Waddle. Waddle was number 1 last year. Who's to say that Tyreek Hill comes in, gets instant rapport with Tua and becomes the next Pat Mahomes' top receiver again? Pat Mahomes is not there anymore. Okay? Tua is suspect, to say the least, at quarterback. We don't know how good he is. I suspect that he could bust. I suspect that he could be amazing. I don't know. Am I willing to spend a first-round pick on Tyreek Hill based on last year's numbers? That's going to be a big no for me. Thanks for coming out, though. Tyreek Hill is a no for me. Fade this wide receiver, guys, and just avoid the hassle. Avoid, if there's this many question marks, guys, I tend to stay away. There's an old saying, okay? When in doubt, don't, right? So do not draft these studs. Very, very simple, guys. Do not draft these studs is the name of the show, and I'm giving you reasons why. All right, number 4 here. Now, again, this is an unpopular opinion, but I don't care. I'm going to say what I'm going to say. I'm 1 for 1. I'm 1 for 2, because the first year I mentioned, the guy I'm talking about here, guys, is Austin Eckler, okay? He's a stud. There's no doubt about it. He had himself a great year last year. And the thing that really helps Austin Eckler, I'm going to be honest with you, is Justin Herbert, is that offense. It's a good offense, man. I like Herbert. I love this offense. That's another reason that's going against everything that I say about Austin Eckler, because he's in a great position. He's on a great team where he's got that opportunity to flourish and shine. So that's my only reason that I even consider Austin being good, or even consider him, the reason he finishes where he finishes. So last year, okay, the year before I said he would bust, he busted. This past year, he had a good year, this last year, okay? 2 years ago, I was right. Last year, I was wrong. Now, even when you look at Austin Eckler last year, finishing second amongst running backs, 343 points, all right? I'm going to put something in perspective for you. And you can say, yeah, he's turned over a new leaf. Maybe he's changed. Maybe he's a better guy. Maybe he's just a great running back. It just took years to flourish. And maybe that's possible. But a couple of points here I want you to notice here when you're investing a first-round pick in Austin Eckler, or, early second or whatever you're doing, right? Because he's a top 5, top 6 running back in PPR, I believe, on the consensus rankings, right? So one thing to know about him, he's never rushed for over 1,000 yards. Okay, now you're saying, well, Joe, he's a PPR guy. I get it. Doesn't matter. When I'm drafting a running back as my RB1, he needs to be getting a lot of rushing yards. Okay, that's very important to me. Okay, that trumps everything else in receiving. I don't care. If you have 1,500 rushing yards, I don't care how many receptions you get. Rushing yards are king, all right? And attempts. He's peaked at 206. Here's the thing. He's never hit 1,000 rushing yards. He had 911 rushing yards last year. Okay, that was his peak. He's never hit over 207 rushing attempts last year. That was his peak, right? He's never had more than 10 rushing touchdowns. He had 12 last year. That was his peak. If you combine his years, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, that's 4 years. His rushing touchdowns, guys, this is very pathetic, are 9. 9 rushing touchdowns in 4 seasons. Stick with me on this one. I'm getting to something here. He had 12 rushing touchdowns last season. I don't see that as Austin Eckler has emerged and he's an amazing running back. I see that as this guy had the luckiest year of his entire life, and it's not going to happen again. That's how I view that. Okay. Now he had 8 receiving touchdowns. He had that in 2019. Okay. He had the good, decent year in 2019. I said he'd bust in 20. He did. Came back in 2021. So he got hurt, by the way, in 2020. He had only played 10 games. Okay. So that's part of it. So is durability going to be an issue? Now, the guy's a weirdo. I mean, he's a weirdo because he had me blocked when I talked bad about him. Then he unblocked me for no reason. Just noticed that he unblocked me because people were sending me his videos. I'm like, oh, an Austin Eckler video. How am I unblocked? And then I started following him. Like, hey, man, you're a cool guy. I wish you the best in fantasy. And the guy blocks me again for absolutely no reason. Zero reason whatsoever. Maybe he saw me. I didn't mention him in my top 10 list. So maybe he's bitter about that. But again, he's great to the community. He could have himself a great season. But they did bring in Isaiah Spiller, who I think will be a goal line vulture. He's definitely going to take away from those 12 rushing touchdowns. And he's going to take away some attempts because I think they want that pure runner. And Austin Eckler is not that. So for me, this stud, if you want to call him that, is a guy you got to fade. So Austin Eckler for me is a no. Pinnacle year last year. Anomaly the year last year. Spiller's going to get some work. I'm not sold on this guy being a workhorse running back. The only thing he's got going for him is he's really good in receptions. He catches the ball in the backfield, and he's got a good offense. Other than that, Seen some injuries in the past. Again, I'm not sold on Austin Eckler. Time will tell, and he's working extra hard so Spiller doesn't lose the job. So another stud you need to fade. And the last guy here, you may have heard me talk about him. There's actually two guys. Honorable mention, I'll give him to you right now, is Dalvin Cook. Stay away. He's definitely going to miss time, so there's a bonus for you. But the guy I'm talking about is DeAndre Swift, okay? Now, DeAndre Swift is a top 8 running back on the consensus rankings, okay? Based on what? This is a consensus bias. Now, they have a lot of copy and paste, but they also have a lot of biases on players that they particularly like. The fact that DeAndre Swift is ranked ahead of like David Montgomery, Zeke Elliott, Breece Hall, and who else is there? Saquon Barkley is absolutely ludicrous, okay? We're talking about a guy who's peaked at 151 attempts, 617 yards, 5 touchdowns. Now you're saying, well, Joe, you only played 13 games last year, Joe. He had a good stretch down the ends, Joe. He had like a 19-pointer in standard in week 11, Joe. He had a 10-pointer in week 18. Let me pull it up in PPR, guys. Sorry. He had a 22-pointer in week 11, and he had a 14-pointer in week 18. Big deal. A 3.9-pointer in week 12, and a 5.9 point PPR in 17. I'm not seeing anything spectacular. He had a couple good games. He had a good week 7 of 28 points. He had a good week 5, week 3, and week 1. He had like 5 good games out of 13. Okay, I'll give him that. Okay, he had some good games. But even in those games, the one where he had in week 7, he had 28.4 points. He had 3.7 yards per carry. Like, I'm just not seeing it here, guys. Like, I'm not seeing how he could be a top 8 back when you look at the attempts, they're not there. Now, again, he had the one game in week 10 where he had 33 attempts. Check this out. This is brutal. 33 attempts, and he averaged 3.9 yards per carry for 130 yards and 0 touchdowns. 33 attempts, and the dude couldn't even get 3.9 yards per carry. Like, couldn't even get a touchdown. This dude sucks. I don't know how to tell you this, guys. I hate to break it to you. He's not good. Just like all this news breaking out about Rashad Penny getting 20 carries a game. The guy can't finish a game to save his life. You're going to give this guy 20 attempts a game and break him? He sucks. Kenneth Walker is the guy. He's a workhorse in college. He was drafted in the second round. Walker is going to be the guy. Give me Walker later, and I'm fading Penny, right, for the Seahawks. So, Swift, I don't even want to call him a stud, but I'm calling him a stud based on what the rankings have him at. But either way, I'm going to fade DeAndre Swift this year. He's a pass for me. He's a stud to fade. Peaked at 151 attempts. And again, a perfect example is 33 attempts in week 10, his pinnacle game, and he only musters up 3.9 yards per carry and 0 touchdowns at 16.5 points PPR. 16.5 points on 33 attempts against Pittsburgh in week 10. I don't know what to tell you guys. He's not good, okay? And again, you look at his attempts, he had 151. 33 came from that one game. I don't know what happened in that game. I didn't watch the game. I don't know. I'm assuming they wanted to run the ball a lot. So maybe they're like, hey, man, I think we got a workhorse in this guy. Let's just give him a shot. Maybe someone got hurt that game. I don't know. But, 151 attempts in a season, and 33 came from one game. He's not a goal line guy. He's not a vulture. He just sucks. All right. So Swift is a no for me. I definitely see the ceiling, but I'm no. There's enough flags to say no. All right. So Cooper Kupp, Adams, Tyreek Hill, Austin Eckler, DeAndre Swift, all top 10 guys. I'm telling you to stay away from all of them, while the mainstream telling you to draft them first overall in their class, top 10, first round. Screw that. Stay away. All right, guys? Subscribe, thumbs up, get the 16-round draft solution. Head on over to manscaped.com. Use code ShowerLion20. Go treat yourself right now. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. I'll keep the content rolling. Guys, talk soon. I'm out.